Spring Lake Heights, back to order, please. Regular meeting, July 11th, 2011. Please stand for a moment of silent reflection and salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have a roll call, please?
Mayor Enright?
Here.
Councilman Brennan?
Here.
Councilwoman Cynthia?
Here.
Councilman Diver?
Here.
Councilwoman King?
Here.
Councilman Mechanico? Absent. Councilman Vorba?
Here.
This meeting is called pursuant to the provisions of the Open Public Meeting Law. Notice of this meeting was included in a list of meetings sent to the Co-Star and the Asbury Park Press, posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building and on the Borough website. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Any discussion?
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda. I'd like to make a motion to include a new resolution. I guess it's going to be resolution 118-2011.
We have a motion on the floor to amend the agenda. Could I have a second for that, please?
I'll second it.
Any discussion on the amendment to the agenda? No? Okay. May I have a roll call, please, on amending the agenda to include Resolution 118-2011, vacating Resolution 113-2011?
Mr. Brennan?
Yes.
Ms. Cynthia?
Yes.
Mr. Diver?
No.
Ms. King?
I recuse myself.
Mr. Vorba?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. May I have a motion, please, to approve the amended agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Brennan?
Yes.
Ms. Cynthia?
Yes.
Mr. Diver?
No.
Ms. King?
Yes.
Mr. Vorba?
Yes.
Up to discussion items, I have a few things. On July 14th, which is this Thursday evening, Peter Abakian at 5 o'clock will be here in Borough Hall for anyone who lives on Park Avenue from 71 to 10th Avenue, because Park Avenue is going to be paved and curbs and sidewalks put in after Labor Day. And Peter Abakian will be here to answer residents' questions. And I believe a letter went out today to the residents along Park Avenue telling them that, you know, they're welcome to come to that meeting if they have questions. If they can't, he'd be happy to have them call him or whatever. But it's sidewalks, curbs, but only up to 10th Avenue. It doesn't go further on, because I think yours was done, wasn't it, further on? Sometime there are curbs and sidewalks there? There were, but, okay. That's on the 14th. Just some dates you might want to remember. The Senior Health Fair is back again this year, and that's going to be on September 24th at the school. And October the 8th, it's a Saturday, is going to be the townwide yard sale. August 6th, I would encourage everybody to get involved in the golf outing or luncheon or dinner that the First Aid Squad is having. I think everybody got a flyer at home about that. That's August 6th. I have been asked to tell you that tax bills are delayed because until the governor certifies our state aid, we can't do our taxes, right, Colleen?
Right.
So our tax bills are going to be delayed until the governor certifies that. So they'll be late going out. And as of today, water bills are going out. Okay. Council committee reports. Councilman Brennan.
Just an update on the efforts to relocate the telephone lines. That work is in process. I asked sorry.
Okay.
We're changing our telephone service from a private carrier that handled Verizon lines to Optimum Cablevision because it's a considerable savings. That work is in progress. They've completed the community center and the other buildings in the borough.
Is that it? Councilwoman Cindy? Councilman Diver?
Just an update on recreation. We now have 147 Spring Lake Heights children enrolled in the recreation program this year, which is probably the largest we've had in a few years. And also, there will be 4 concerts. I know Sean's going to contact Janine tomorrow to have them put up on the website for the dates. There will be 4 summer concerts, and we already have about, I believe, between 40 and 50 kids signed up for soccer, and there'll be an extra date put up for that.
Which I had a question from a couple of people about the salaries of the people who work for recreation. I know it comes out of the Recreation Trust, but did they get raises this year if they worked last year?
I think some of the students were junior counselors last year and are now senior counselors this year, and that was some of the difference, I believe.
And is it true that some of them, because they work basically 6 weeks, right?
Correct.
They make more than our crossing guards? Do you know that?
I'm not aware what the crossing guards make.
They do they, Colleen?
Some of them, the crossing guards make $13 an hour.
Councilwoman King
I don't have anything.
and Councilman Warbeck.
Nothing to report.
May I have a motion, please, to open the first voice of the public for any business?
I'll make that motion.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Would anyone like to speak tonight? Use that mic, I don't think.
You can bring it closer to
You
us.
can bring it closer.
Lot of Sir, Pitney Drive. I'd just like to know if any worksheets were shown on the, turning the courts over to Wall Township and how the figures made out. Is it going to be a savings or is it just hoping to have a savings? What's going to happen to Anna? Does she have a job or is she going to be fired? And we're going to have another lawsuit on our hands. And I would also like to say, you talk about seeing our faces. A couple of you said you see the expressions on our faces from up there. Well, we see the expressions on your faces. And if you saw them, you might be surprised. If you act like children, and we don't come here to see that. We come here to be informed and we voted you in, and I think we are entitled to know what's going on and have a vote on a lot of things that are passed. Mr. Borback the other week, he had a couple of things to say and he was just ignored. It's not right. We don't come here for that. You could stay home and look at television. Thank you.
Gladys, I can say, I think just about anything we're discussing, we had put out on the, if we knew about it, we had it put out in the back tonight. The capital money, all of that was out there.
Okay, thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak?
My name is Barbara Moglia. I live at Park Avenue for 47 years. 3.5 years ago, the house on 107 Park Avenue was taken down, but the trees, shrubs, and broken sidewalk and driveway were never removed. Since then, the lot owner has planted wildflowers which are overgrown. We have a fence on our property, and the trees and shrubs on the lot are so overgrown that they are pushing against and bending our fence. I know if a house is taken down, the tax rate charges for the lot is less, but what about if the overgrown trees, shrubs, and driveway are still there? Are they taxed for those items? We take care of our property, and the conditions of this lot does not help the value of the homes on Park Avenue. On June 2nd, the code inspector issued a violation to 107 Park Avenue to be taken care of in 7 days. Nothing has been done, and it is now July 11th. As homeowners, we are very frustrated by this situation, and I'm sure you must be tired of listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak? I have a motion to close the first voice of the public.
I'll make that motion.
a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're up to unfinished business, Resolution 118, 2011, which is vacating Resolution 113, 2011. May I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Yes, Your Honor, this is a motion.
Could you explain to the public what it is?
Sure. Back on July, the last meeting, there was a resolution 113-2011, which authorized the mayor to enter into a shared service agreement between the Borough of Spring Lake Heights and Wall Township, which was going to abolish the Spring Lake Heights administration of its municipal court and merge and consolidate that court administration with the Township of Wall's municipal court and relocate the physical location of Spring Lake Heights Municipal Court from Spring Lake Heights to Wall Township. That shared service agreement has not been executed because it has not been fully determined to have been in proper form.
Louder, John.
This resolution would vacate that resolution, which would essentially stop the movement of the court. The reasons behind the resolution are that the savings do not really amount to much. My calculations after the last meeting, I had an opportunity to speak to our chief financial officer. The calculations at best turn out to be about between $40,000 and $44,000, mathematical calculation, $40,000 to $44,000 in paper savings. But the problem with that is that it doesn't take into account a number of different things. First is the fact that our police potentially, their overtime will go up because they're going to have to be traveling from our location here to Wall Township. Secondly, the amounts of monies, the revenues. One thing about the court that is unlike other entities, other departments in our government, is that it's a revenue generator. Our revenue has been very good because we have a very efficiently run court. Our net revenue after all of the various other entities that are entitled to monies, and there's a ton of funds, like there's the Safe Neighborhood Fund, there's the Violent Crime Compensation Board Fund. When there's a fine imposed, a number of different entities get a slice of the pie, so to speak. What we garner last year was $115,000, which is considerable. That's because we have really dedicated people who are doing that work. The idea that we're going to be getting, the get the same level of commitment to the administration of our court, I just don't see it. I know that, and I know this is anecdotal, but I practice in front of municipal court. Seegert is over in Wall Township. In just the past month, I got a notice from the Seegert Municipal Court, which is now administered by Wall Township. I got a notice that said, that noticed me for a court hearing on a Sunday. So I had to call, say, what is this going on? And they said, obviously this is a mistake. And then I got a follow-up notice in the same case, which didn't even name the name of the case. And basically what it comes down to is, once we move from here to there, we're going to be a stepchild over there, and they're not going to give us the same attention. So the idea that we're going to be garnering $115,000 in revenue next year, you have to take that into account on the savings to see whether or not we're going to experience a loss. That would undercut whatever savings there might be. And the other problem is that we have a court administrator who's a tenured 18-year employee who's going to be it's tenured, and the idea that she's going to walk away from an 18-year veteran position without filing litigation, I think is naive. And there's been some talk about making her the new clerk or a new borough administrator. Obviously, I'm opposed to borough administrators, anybody. But the idea that we would make somebody who doesn't have that, doesn't have the certifications or even any experience to be borough clerk, our borough clerk, when we have a deputy borough clerk who's got the experience to be the acting clerk, just doesn't make any sense. And the idea that we would keep an administrator, because that's where the savings is. The savings is exclusively, and I say this, the savings are exclusively in the salary and benefits for the court administrator and a somewhat smaller amount from the deputy court administrator. The idea that we would keep that same person salary on our budget is not going to produce any savings to us. So, in short, the savings is chimerical. The administration is going to suffer. Our identity as a community is going to take a hit because, quite frankly, unlike other municipalities that have moved their courts, they've moved their courts. Like, for instance, Seagirt moved their court because the assignment judge in the county had determined that their facilities at Seagirt were insufficient for purposes of having a court. They couldn't be ADA compliant because they were in upstairs, that type of thing. We were doing it simply for this ostensible savings of $40,000 to $44,000, which, again, doesn't turn out to, will not, and I can say very confidently, will not turn out to be the $44,000 range, if there may not be any savings whatsoever. But whatever modest savings there might be does not justify incurring a new lawsuit from a 18, even throwing somebody out of work who's been with us for 18 years is not the type of way we should be doing business. So those are all the reasons for this resolution.
Thank you, John. Rich?
Just to respond to some of my colleagues' points, as far as the police are concerned, in terms of the budget, the new court, and in fact, we had discussed putting on a bailiff for the court, which we presently don't have. That would save significant funds, in the sense that we would not have a police officer standing in here being paid at the same rate. A bailiff would be paid at the rate of $15 an hour, which is a fraction of what we would pay a police officer to stand here. And in fact, that is supported by the police chief himself. He would like that because he'd rather have his police out patrolling our neighborhoods instead of standing here in the court. In terms of going to Wall Township, one of the things that would also save us on the police budget is that Wall Township, unlike here, and Belmar even, have closed-circuit TV. So there would be no reason for the police to drive out to the county jail in Freehold, to pick up prisoners and transport them back and forth, taking hours out of their day and taking them out of our town when they could be patrolling our town. They would not have to do that because the judge could administer right through closed-circuit TV. I'm sure my colleagues are aware of that as well. Our revenues are good. I think our revenues will continue to be good. There's no way to quantify that if we move our administration of our court from here to Wall Township, that all of a sudden our revenues would drop. There really is no way to quantify that. Anything would really be hypothetical as far as that goes. In terms of their commitment, from all the discussions that we had with either Wall or even Belmar, I can assure everyone they are very committed to doing a good job. And to the extent that moving the court would somehow threaten the identity of Spring Lake Heights, I would reject that totally. I don't see how that, I don't think Spring Lake looks any different today than it did the other day because their court is in Spring Lake Heights. I would certainly say that I don't think anyone thinks of Seagirt differently because their court is in Wall, and et cetera, et cetera. Belmar was looking to have all these courts. I don't think it threatens our identity. It is, in this day and age of hard economic times, and look at all the latest economic data, and where are the layoffs? They're all coming from the governments because we have to involve ourselves in shared services. It's the only way into the future. On the one hand, we say we don't want to raise taxes. On the other hand, we say, but we want to keep all these, parts of our government, but we can't. And I would quote my colleague from the paper just this past week. People in government are going to have to give. And I'm not saying that, my colleague did. And to say that the court would only save $40,000, again, I would dispute that number. It's more like $60,000 that would be saved. And even if it were $40,000, say it's $40,000 that you save. I think $40,000 to everybody sitting here is a nice piece of change. It's a lot of money. And if you ask a guy who had an $80,000 job and he's now making $40,000, I'm sure you know some people that might be in that position. Believe me, it's a lot of money as far as that goes. Outside of that, in terms of, I'm not going to speak to the tenured employee because, again, that could be litigation, so I'm not going to speak to that. But there is case law surrounding that issue. And so I would say that there is no reason to vacate this. We are simply doing what's been done all across this state in many, many municipalities, everywhere. I respect my colleagues' views, but I respectfully disagree.
If I could just respond briefly. With respect to the issue of the bailiff, I think what Councilman Diver is missing is that we can anticipate with a great deal of certitude that the union, PBA 50, will file an unfair labor practice charge if we attempt to kind of put somebody other than a police officer into the bailiff position. That's a past practice which has been long established. In fact, probably going back for as long as time can be remembered. As far as the closed circuit, and so we're not going to be saving any money on the bailiff. As far as the closed circuit TV is concerned, it's true that the closed circuit TV is available over at Wall Township, but we could bring closed circuit TV here as well. The reason why that's never been done in the past is because we simply don't transport that many people from MCCI, Monmouth County Correctional Institute, to this location for court. And not only that, but the closed circuit TV is a cost which is going to be associated with us. We're going to have to pay for that service over there at Wall Township. So I think that there's negligible savings, if any at all there. And if there is any savings, it can be easily brought to municipal court. If you want to look into bringing closed circuit TV here to save some money, by all means, let's do it.
Yeah, I'd like to call the question.
May I have a motion, please, to call the question?
I'll make that motion.
Second it.
May I have a roll call, please? We need a 2/3 vote.
Mr. Brennan?
Yes.
Ms. Cynthia? Yes. Mr. Diver?
No.
Ms. King?
I have to recuse.
Mr. Warbeck?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, so I guess we're up to motion, which
What's
is,
that motion to call the question? Do we have to vote on the resolution?
yeah,
Now
we're
you have
voting
to
on a
vote.
resolution. May I have,
We have my motion.
and I have a second, I'm voting on Resolution 118, vacating. Okay, could I have a roll call, please, on Resolution 118?
Mr. Brennan?
Yes.
Ms. Cynthia? Yes. Mr. Diver?
No.
Ms. King?
Recuse.
Mr. Warbeck?
Yes.
Motion passed, Mayor.
We're up to new business, ordinance number 13, 2011. Would the clerk please read the title?
Bond ordinance 13-2011, bond ordinance providing for various capital improvements and the acquisition of various capital equipment, appropriating $1,430,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $1,358,500 bonds and notes to finance a portion of the cost thereof, authorized in and by the Borough of Spring Lake Heights in the County of Monmouth, New Jersey.
Could I just remind everyone, we're using the revised.
Numbers.
Okay, could I have a motion, please, to introduce and advertise in accordance with the law?
I'll second it.
Now, any discussion?
Yes, Your Honor. I just want to say that I'm opposed to this.
Speak up, Tom.
Yes. I'm opposed to this bond ordinance, and for a number of different reasons.
John, are you talking about the whole ordinance or parts of it?
I'm opposed to this ordinance as it's written. I may be amenable to a bond ordinance. I do think there's an appropriate place for long-term capital purchasing by way of bonds, but the idea that we would be going out with a $1.24 million bond to finance what it is suggested here is I just simply, I'm opposed to it. And for instance, they're looking for 2 sanitation trucks for $340,000. Now, let me say that something about the sanitation trucks. We have known that we needed new sanitation trucks for years. And anybody who's been coming here knows that I have been making an issue of it for years, saying we need to plan to purchase these trucks. We need to put money aside to purchase these trucks. What was done with the past 3 years, and the reasons, one of the primary reasons I voted against the budgets the past 3 years is that there has not been a rational, deliberate approach toward budgeting for capital outlays. So what we have now is we have 2 sanitation trucks, which allegedly are on their last leg, which I don't doubt perhaps they are. But I don't see why we would be buying 2 sanitation trucks simultaneously. I think we should buy a sanitation truck and perhaps look into buying a used sanitation truck so that we can have staggered purchasing. All we're going to do is set up the same situation going forward with respect to sanitation trucks. So I'm not opposed to purchasing sanitation trucks. I am opposed to purchasing 2 brand new sanitation trucks, which are going to, put some council in the future in the same spot we're in right now. A mega hauler is one of the new. Those of you who've seen our trash collection know that we use the mega hauler is the new pickup that goes into the driveways to pick up stuff. I don't have a problem with a mega hauler per se, but I do think that. And you know what, if for purposes of compromise, I have no problem with putting a mega hauler into a bond ordinance, but again, I think a mega hauler, it's a 15-year useful life, projected useful life. And if we go over, my basic theory of financing for municipal government is that if we're over 10 years, which is the life of a bond anticipation note, then maybe it makes sense to use a bond. And the reason why is because it costs money to bond. It's 20% on top of the principal amount of what you're actually going to spend goes for soft overhead of the bond, soft costs, the attorney's fees, the engineering fees, interest, and those types of stuff. So a 20% soft costs, that's a lot of money on $1 million. With bond anticipation notes, you don't have those same costs. You have a fraction of those costs. And bond anticipation notes, you can make a purchase and pay that purchase, so long as you pay that purchase off within 10 years. So if you're buying something that's got less than 10 years, you might as well be using bond anticipation notes rather than putting it out off on a bond. 15 years is beyond the duration of the bond anticipation note, but it's not that much farther out. And a mega hauler is $27,000. We should be able to absorb the purchase of a mega hauler that's $2,700 a year, thereabouts, for a mega hauler, rather than packaging it into a huge bond that people are going to be paying for 20 years beyond the life expectancy of the mega hauler itself. A backhoe and a front loader. I know it appears that, when you put together a jumbo bond ordinance, it becomes everybody's wish list. But I never heard a case made for a backhoe. A front loader you can buy a front loader with a backhoe on the back of a front loader. So why we would be purchasing 2 separate pieces of equipment, I have no idea. A front loader, okay, I can see having a front loader because of the blizzard that we had and where we were at. It's another reason why we need a sanitation truck. So I can go with a front loader with the sanitation truck.
John, what are you asking us to take out?
I'm just talking right now.
Oh, okay.
And then a utility truck is just a pickup truck for I assume it's a pickup truck, well, I guess it's a utility truck, which is gonna have, tool cabinetry on it. I guess that's for the water, I mean, I don't know why we need a utility truck. If we need a pickup truck, let's get a pickup truck, but why we're getting a utility truck, I don't know. Does anybody know whether or not this utility truck is a pickup truck or something else other than a pickup truck?
I think it's supposed to be a pickup truck.
I think it is a pickup truck.
For $32,618?
That's a nice pickup truck.
It's expensive.
Sounds like a what?
Sounds like a pickup truck, is that what they're running for?
Okay, well, a pickup truck has a life expectancy of 5 years. Why would we be using a 20-year bond to pay for something that's gonna last us 5 years? Again, that's something that we should be paying as we go along rather than trying to put out. The police want an automated license plate reader, which I assume is so that they can read.
I think that's at the lights.
What's that?
It's at our lights, I think.
No.
Excuse me.
Isn't it?
I
No.
gotta talk, I don't wanna jump in, but if I might. The automated license plate reader is on the back of the police car, so as they drive
that one,
around, it's
okay.
taking pictures of everybody's license plate and running them through the computer automatically. And this is at the tune of $19,000 per. That's a lot of money.
And again, even if you would assume, I don't think there's a majority of the people in the borough of Spring Lake Heights want our police to be going around doing automated license plate reading. We want to support our police, but that's not something we want. That's my impression of what the people, the average folks would say. Again, that's $19,000, and it's a 5-year useful life. So if you were going to buy that, you should pay it by way of a bond anticipation note. The stationary solar speed signs, I don't have a problem with having stationary solar speed signs. I like them, I think they're very effective. But again, it's a 5-year useful life. That's something that we should be doing by way of a bond anticipation note, rather than stretching it out over 20 years, because you know what happens with this stuff is it just all accumulates. Essentially well, going forward, utility trucks. The police want 2 trucks. They want, what's the?
SUVs.
They want 2 SUVs to patrol our town. And the reason why they're trucks, and they don't even want the trucks. The reason why the request for the trucks is there is because you can't put a cruiser, a police car, into a bond ordinance because it doesn't meet the criteria for bonding. And you'll recall, those of you who were here for the budget debate, this was something, we have always responsibly purchased cruisers, but the council determined not to get cruisers in the budget, but rather, in order to ostensibly keep the tax rate low, they refused to purchase a cruiser, and instead now they're putting in 2 trucks, 2 SUVs, into a bond with 5-year useful life, into a 20-year bond. $100,000 for main office computer office upgrades. I mean, I don't even know what to say about that. I know that it's not going to be for a computer, and I don't know what kind of work is going to be going on for a main office upgrade. But I don't see $100,000 worth of need in the main office. And again, that's a 5-year useful life. The engineering for the ADA grant, 5-year useful life. I guess that's even less than a 5-year useful life. It's the engineering for Americans with Disabilities Act grant. And I assume that some of the upgrade for the main office is to put in an elevator. But I still don't see $100,000. Borough Street.
I don't think there's any elevator.
There is no elevator. Oh, there's no elevator in the 100,000?
I don't think so. I think a good portion of it, Colleen, I could be wrong, but I thought it was computers. Our computer system's old,
$100,000 is a lot of money.
but our computer system is very, very old. And our office equipment, if you recall, a couple of years ago, we took that money that had been bonded and we used it in the police station. We have desks that are falling apart.
I don't see $100,000 worth of need.
Rich?
And well, the one last thing is the Borough Street improvements, which is $800,000. I do see a need for a bond for Borough Street improvements. It's pretty clear that what's going on in Trenton is that municipal aid for transportation is being gutted.
I asked that that be put in, and as part of that $300,000, we'd like to pay someone to go out and look at every single road in the borough, and look at the curbing and everything, and rank them. And we're gonna fix them the worst first, okay? Because right now, somebody calls up and says, oh, my road needs this, needs that. We don't have a list anyplace, we have no plan, and this way we come up with a plan, and in an organized fashion, we're going to fix the roads. And if we don't get grants, because the grants seem to be drying up in Trenton, then at least we're gonna have some money to get started on that. And I ask for that. Rich?
Mayor, to my colleague's point on the sanitation trucks, I agree. They should have been done in a staggered way. But the fact remains that whatever happened in the past 3 years, and I agree, I think there was a failure in the past 3 years to at least get one of these trucks. But the fact of it is, we are spending a great deal of money on maintenance. We could actually probably lower our maintenance costs a little bit by having new equipment. We do need them. As to the front loader, the backhoe, I think, is something to do with the water utility. The front loader, we absolutely should have that. Just witnessed the snowstorm. We had a 33-inch snowstorm, and you know, God help us, you know. And now that may only happen once every 25 years, but who knows?
We made it though.
We made, yes, sir, we did. We did make it, but there were a lot of people who could have had issues and real problems because they were stuck in their homes, especially our senior residents. You know, God forbid someone had an issue, and we were lucky, and I know the mayor said this too, we were very, very fortunate that no one had a life-threatening issue. But God forbid someone did, you'd want to have that piece of equipment because it's quite possible it would wind up costing you a lot more than that in the end if we didn't. As to the main office, and I could be wrong on this, but it's my understanding that there were funds set aside a few years ago for the main office, and they were then appropriated over to the police department to redo the police department.
I just said that.
Correct?
Right, I just said that.
And it is true. We are operating on an antiquated computer system, an antiquated network system in there. The desks are not, some of these desks are from 30 years ago. And in terms of today's current equipment, it's hard to operate at these desks using the newer equipment. It is. There is no reason why we shouldn't invest in our own office and our office staff.
Would anyone else like to speak?
Just if I could respond to that. I mean, look, I have no problem with sanitation trucks, I've said that. As far as the backhoe being for the water utility, if the backhoe is for the water utility, you're putting it into a multi-purpose bond ordinance under the general bonding power and not into the water sewer utility is wrong and incorrect. So I don't know why we would.
Well, I'll find out. I could be wrong on that.
Well, don't you think we should have that knowledge before we're up here to ask the voter to introduce this? I mean, this is a $1.2 million, with the total ordinance with the soft costs is $1.3 million. And, you know, the idea that we don't have that information, and as far as the main office computers, I acknowledge that the main office computers need, you know, everything needs to be upgraded. But to put it in, to put a 5-year useful life purchase into a bond for 20 years, what's gonna happen in 5 years? It is a 20-year bond unless it's paid off earlier.
It's a 13-year bond. It's not 20.
If you calculate, look, bonds could be paid off over the course of 20 years.
Do you want to speak to this here? Why don't you use the mic that's right there? Carrie Morgan, our bond counsel.
Good evening, thank you, Mayor and ranking council members.
Speak into the mic.
Sorry. I work with Dilworth Paxson. We are your bond counsel, and the reason I'm here tonight, Colleen Lapp had asked me to come and help explain some of the financing options that you guys have. Obviously, you know, the general capital ordinance that's being introduced tonight has some items that are up for discussion right now, but I am available to explain some of the financing of if you did go forward with this bond ordinance and we're looking to do long-term financing, how that would all play out. Just to answer a couple preliminary questions that Mr. Brennan had, that is correct. Councilman Diggler was correct. It's over a 13-year period. The reason, yes, you can finance items over 20 years. If you were only going to do the street improvements, you would have the ability to do 20 years. But what you do is, and in the schedule that I have, it's an average useful life, where you see at the bottom it says 13.86 years. On the schedule that has the multi-purpose bond ordinance 13-2011. What you do is you take all the total of all the capital improvements and you average it over the useful life. So it's a
Okay, so
weighted
stop for a second.
average useful life.
Carrie, stop for a second.
Yes.
So, if we take out the streets and roads for 300,000, our
Yes.
average is gonna be down below 10 years. So why would we possibly incur 20% soft costs for a bond, which the useful life doesn't even exceed what would be available by way of bond anticipation note?
Well, just so you know, 20% soft cost is really just a benchmark. You don't always spend that kind of percentage on every ordinance. If you're purchasing equipment, you probably would spend considerably less because there might not be a whole lot of acquisition costs. However, if you have a project such as borough street improvements, you might actually have significantly more soft costs because you have a lot of engineering and you have those type of costs that aren't typically involved with just a regular purchase of equipment. And that's where 20% is generally just a benchmark. You do have the ability to lower that. That's just something that in the public finance
What would the
arena,
average, say, be? Is there an average of that soft cost?
on a bond ordinance? Well, you couldn't really say it was an average, but as I said, in the public finance arena, that's something, it's just a typical benchmark because you want to make sure that all of your costs are included for the bond ordinance. That doesn't mean you have to spend that much money, but it does need to be in there.
But answer my question, Carrie.
Yes.
If you take out the streets and roads for the $300,000,
Right.
that puts us below 10 years. Why would we use a bond and incur the soft costs that are involved in bonding when we can use bond anticipation notes for the same financing?
Well, you currently have a bond anticipation note that's going into its third year. You're required to pay down bond anticipation notes after your third year. So,
Thank God.
right. So if you look at the maturity schedule of going out over, well, and I did include a copy of a sample maturity schedule. You would have a significant pay down because you have $1 million note out there right now.
For the water meters.
No, for all the capital equipment. Well, part of it includes the water meters, yes.
Largely, the
Correct.
bulk of it is water meters.
Correct.
Which-
Yes, the
which was-
$1.2 million.
Which was the last large bond I think this council passed.
Right.
Too much fanfare.
Currently, you have $1 million out there. What you're saying with the roads, obviously, the road piece
So,
of,
so what you're saying is, because we now have to start paying for the water meters because it's after the third year, whatever it is, that means that we're gonna have to start paying, that means we're gonna have to raise taxes to pay for the water meters, the repayment of which was put off because it was only in an interest-only position on our balance sheets. Again, I argued for 3 years that it shouldn't be interest only, we should be retiring the principal all along, to deaf ears. But now, because we're gonna have to raise taxes to pay for the water meters, we don't wanna have to raise taxes to pay for all this other stuff too, so let's put it off on a bond.
well, typically, when you're deciding whether you want to finance short-term or long-term, it really depends on the total amount that you're going out for, and the useful life is really a big factor. So if you're looking at doing a significant road project, then you're better off going out long-term. Over the long haul, you're not going out 20 years, you're going out 13 years, which is average useful life. So you're not taking 5-year projects and paying them out over 20 years. It's an average. And what we, in speaking with Mayor Enright and Colleen Lapp, there are several financing options out there for the borough. One being the Monmouth County Improvement Authority has a capital lease program. And so your smaller items, your 5-year items, you could go out and do through a capital lease program. But if you're already looking to finance your note, you're gonna pay off that $1 million, and you have some large capital projects, you're better off doing it all in one financing than doing it piecemeal. Because what's gonna happen, you're gonna have to pay to roll over that note again. So you're incurring separate costs if you do it, a capital lease program, and there's also a program
Harry,
through
you
the.
only gotta pay, if you roll it over, the reason why you're rolling over is because you're not paying it down. That's been the problem. The problem is that the council, rather than facing up to reality and being truthful with the taxpayers of this town with respect to what it really costs to actually have to run the government, we've been playing games like this of putting off the inevitable, and now here comes the piper.
Well, in all due respect, you have $1 million out there. So however that came to pass, that's where we are now. You have to.
700,000 of it was for the
Mayor.
water meters.
I guess in the current environment that we're in, where interest rates at this point are pretty low, and in terms of where that could be, say, in a year from now, in my judgment, and this is my opinion, we're probably at a very advantageous point for doing something like this. You're not going to see rates, they're not going to stay forever. And God knows if something doesn't happen by August 2nd, I think you might see something go up fairly quicker than you'd like. But I guess my point is, number one, I would fully support the street improvements. I think that's critical. I think that's just a normal thing to do. And actually, I think it's good that we're doing it instead of just relying on grants. We should do some of this. But there's also nothing that stops us, say, if we come upon better times, God willing for everybody, we could pay this down in advance. Isn't that correct? We can elect to do that.
Well, what you have here is if you look at the schedule that shows the $2.278 million financing, which accounts for that $1 million of bonds. When you go out to finance, as I said, you're going to be paying down over 13 years some of the items that are projected out over 20 years. So you're shortening up your financing period. Yes, your rates right now are probably, they may not go down.
And what's the average rate that we're seeing out there right now that we would probably be able to bond this with?
Well, if you look at the schedule that has the bond debt service list, you'll see what underwriters typically do when they come out to bid, and this is a competitive bid, so you would potentially have 3, 4, or 5 bids from several different underwriters in the public finance arena. They typically bid with a variable interest rate, so you'd go from, the coupon, the earliest coupon being a 2% rate, and it would gradually go up over time. The other option that the borough also has that we've discussed is the Monmouth County Improvement Authority has a pooled loan deal. And what that is they get together with other municipalities and some school boards as well, and they do a full-blown financing and share the costs. So it does potentially save money if you have a decent project and the Monmouth County Improvement Authority will keep their costs down. The only issue that we've come across, and I've been working with Colleen, is the timing of that for this year. They typically go out to finance in December. Last year, December financings were at an all-time high. There were people pulling their bonds at the end of the year because the rates skyrocketed. There was so much paper out there. So you can never count on the fact that you're going to have rates in September that are going to be available in December. And on the contrary, it's very unlikely that the rates would be as good in December as they would be in September. The other issue with the pooled loan is that sometimes those costs get a little exorbitant. And if you're a small player in a very big pool, you may end up paying more in cost of issuance because the Monmouth County Improvement Authority now has their own bond counsel, they have a financial advisor, they have all these additional
So you
costs
share those costs in
that
addition to your own.
if you go out on your own, you
Mhm.
don't have.
Could you just explain for everybody's information what we talk about when we say a variable rate?
Well,
Just for the folks in the audience that
Sure.
understand
That
exactly.
means it can go up over time.
Well, variable interest rate is obviously, it's not, you know, when you're financing your home, you typically have an interest rate and that's what you pay on the balance.
Fixed.
A variable interest rate would be in each individual maturity every year might be slightly different. So,
Almost like a step coupon.
exactly. So going back to the pooled loan, in speaking with Colleen, we realized that in order to get to December, you would also have to go out and roll over your note again because it comes due in November. So you have that $1 million out there, you have some significant projects right now. Now, in my professional opinion, I think it's a good idea to go out and do long-term financing. Now, obviously, the list of capital equipment is something that you, as a council, would need to discuss as to decide what is most important and what you need and what you don't need. But based on, you know, my position as bond counsel, I put the equipment all in a list and tried to provide you with some information of what that maturity schedule would look like if, in fact, you did these projects.
If I could just, the interest rate argument that you're making doesn't take into account the low interest rates. When you add the overhead costs that are associated with going to bond, that considerably, if you were to consider the overhead over the life of the loan interest, that would
You mean
considerably.
soft costs?
The soft costs. Over the life of the loan, that's gonna considerably bump up what the cost of the loan is above the interest.
Not necessarily. I mean, your soft costs are not all due to bonding. I mean, your soft costs are built into an ordinance. Like I said, you may have significant engineering costs. Whether you go out to bond or not, you're still gonna pay those costs.
Unless we do bond anticipation notes.
You're still gonna have to pay fees to do bond anticipation notes,
You're
and
gonna
if you
pay-
roll
but
it
fees-
over
and the
each
interest-
year.
but the interest rates for the bond anticipation notes are even lower than the bonds.
But they're only for 1 year, and that's why they lock in
And we do
currently.
them routinely, we have a chief financial officer who routinely goes, those of you who don't know what a bond anticipation note is, we go to a local bank, we say, we're the Borough of Spring Lake Heights, we wanna borrow X amount of dollars, what are you gonna charge for us for interest? And they give it to us. This doesn't include your professional opinions from attorneys who are in a conflict of interest because they're gonna get paid on the bond. It involves our chief financial officer who's gonna go down and get the bond
But
anticipation.
it does also involve bond counsel because
But
there's
for
a
us, just a
closing.
simple letter, it's not the
Well,
same.
They prepare the closing documents, they handle the closing, they report to the IRS, they do a lot each year for the note.
Total those up
I will
each
guarantee
year, they
you,
might add up to close to what it would be to bond for.
If you were to do that every year, you'd wind up probably over the term of long-term financing, spending the same money. You're just spending it once a year as opposed to putting it up front.
that's inaccurate. But the reason why this borough kept so debt-free for so long, really, the practice changed with the water meters. The water meters were an aberration. We paid as we went. And what we've done over the course of the last bunch of years is we've kept the tax rate artificially low because we haven't been paying as we've been going along. And now we want to put off into a bond ordinance with the soft costs associated with it, huge purchases that should be purchased as we go along. And we're putting it off for the people who are going to come along after us. You know, using debt to finance the government is what got Washington in trouble, is what got Trenton in trouble, and I'll let you complete the sentence.
Mayor?
Rich?
Again, I agree and I disagree, but again, as you're going out over a longer term, even if you have bands, if you're setting up a short-term note, that doesn't alleviate your soft costs. If we went out to say repave a road and it costs $200,000 to repave this road. We're gonna have those same soft costs from engineering, from attorneys, from whatever, and we're gonna have bond fees. So it's almost a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other argument. I mean, you can see both sides, but at the same time, it's probably more advantageous to secure it in a long-term note for the many issues that confront us. And in terms of especially road building, which can take quite a while, it's probably more advantageous to be in a long-term position, especially at current rates.
Tom?
Carrie, so if we were to bond,
Could you speak into the mic?
if we were to bond, would be at a variable rate, and you said that it would vary, I think you said it was negligible or insignificant?
No, the variable rate it doesn't vary each year. It would be a set maturity schedule, such as the one I provided to you.
So we would
And that's
be-
just a sample of what an underwriter that typically,
That's a sample of how
So
the bonds.
so we start off at 2% and we end up at 5%, but this does not reflect reality. This is just a sample, right?
Right, that's based on current market rates.
That's the
of
current, that's the
long-term
current
finance.
market, what the current market bond looks like.
So,
Of
so if we go
long-term
to a bond, you could be paying in 2024, 5% on our money. Actually, even before that, 2020, we could be paying 5% on our money.
But it
But
could be more
finance
though.
isn't, a bond, no, they're saying that this is set, right?
No, this is just a
It's
sample.
gonna change.
That's just an estimate based on today's current
An
rates
estimate of what is gonna be fixed into the bond?
over a 13-year period.
But an estimate of what's gonna be fixed into the bond, or what is the interest rate gonna be calculated each year at the maturity date? It's fixed into the bond.
Right,
It's-
what our,
So what you're saying is that if we were to go out the bond right now,
It might look like this.
it's gonna look
based on
something like
today's
this.
rates.
So we
It
could
might,
be at
it might, she said.
Might.
And it might be more, and it might be less, but at 2020, what you're saying, this is prepared by Raymond James and Associates, which is an underwriter, I take it, right?
Yes, correct.
And they're using numbers that are realistic for purposes.
Today's
of-
rates.
It's for today's rates, so, and we are talking about creating a bond today. So therefore,
Well, it
in
wouldn't be financed probably for another month to 2 months, just because of the
okay,
timing
but
of
the interest rates aren't gonna vary that much in a month or 2 months.
By December, they probably will, but
By December, they will.
in September, hopefully not.
Okay, but bond anticipation notes in 2020 could be substantially less than 5%.
It could be substantially more.
Bond anticipation notes haven't been over 5% in, I don't think they ever have been over 5%.
Problem is you wouldn't be able to, you'd have to make significant pay downs each year. So if you're
But
looking
that's the
at
point.
principal payments,
But that's the point, you paid down. When you-
understood, but the alternative is to make principal payments as opposed to paying down a large note. Because once you get to a certain point where you want to finance over a longer term, it's going to bring those payments down.
But that's the point, we don't want to finance over the long term. Why would we be making people 20 years from now pay for stuff with a useful life of 5 years, or 13 years from now, whatever it is?
Because if you have an item
Because we
like
don't want to,
streets.
because we don't want to raise taxes now?
True. You don't want to raise them to try to pay off $300,000 in 1 year to make road improvements. You just
Road
can't do
improvements
that.
I don't have a problem with.
Could you let
I don't
somebody
think
else
Mr.
speak,
Brennan
Tom?
objects, I don't think Mr. Brennan objects to the road improvements for 300,000. But he does make a persuasive argument, computers. I mean, when's the last time somebody had a computer last 13 years?
Right, but when you're averaging at, you're also financing 20-year roads over 13 years. It's an average useful life.
100,000, but.
Understood, if you were looking at individual computers, you would never want to finance them over 5 years. But the point is when you have a large enough debt to extend it out over a certain period, you're actually bringing your principal payments. Now you can afford to put that in your budget. You can't incur large costs in a yearly basis and expect to be able to have your budget sustain that.
Unless you anticipate expenses in the future and you plan for it.
And that's certainly
I think that's what Mr. Brennan is advocating, is planning ahead, as opposed to putting things off. It's funny, I guess the road to hell is paved with good intentions. We can always say that we're going to pay these things off sooner, but past councils have not done that. They've paid interest only on a lot of loans.
Well, this
And I don't think
you
anybody-
would have to pay interest and principal every single year. You would have to pay. This isn't like a ban.
By statute,
You
after
must
3
pay
years.
interest and
But
principal
a ban is only, you can only pay interest only for 3 years.
for 3
and then
years,
you
the
must
first
pay.
3 years.
Right, so it's.
Right, so,
If we pass this tonight,
Well, we introduced
Introduce
that we're introducing it, and it says to introduce and advertise in accordance with the law, we would have to advertise this whole thing, what we have here.
Just the ordinance itself. No, you
We wouldn't have
advertise,
to advertise the items.
no.
Also, if you're
that
gonna
was
make a
my-
material, if you're gonna
that
make a
was my
material change,
question.
if you're gonna make a material change, then you have to advertise it again.
well,
You really wanna know what you're gonna buy before you go ahead and advertise it.
yeah, I would say that reasonable people could disagree on this, but there are a lot of items here that I would question that we actually need. Because I recall Chief Petrikin, maybe I'm wrong, but he was here some months ago. He was talking about one police vehicle, not two. And, you know, the solar signs and the automated reader, I mean, you know, I would like to make sure that we need this stuff.
Councilwoman Cynthia.
I just want to point out that every single purchase here that's over $17,000 is subject to both going out to bid and also a vote on council. So it's not as if, this is what, you know, we have to bond in anticipation of purchasing. So, my understanding though is that, our superintendent, Herner had indicated that the sanitation trucks were $225 each. And so the 340, is that one new and one used? No, it's two,
No,
maybe about purchasing
Yeah,
the,
that's not, it wasn't 100, it wasn't 225 each. It was more like about 160, 170 each.
I just recall that. And I think that also we could probably, you know, when we do that, I would like to think that the utility trucks, if we make certain that we don't only say Chevy Tahoe and also other vehicles that could be,
You buy them off the state,
SUV.
you buy them off the state list.
John, would you
Oh,
let
there's
Patty
a state
speak?
list, yeah, but
State list.
But I know, but there.
I wouldn't spend the money to go out and.
John, would you let Patty speak, please?
But that hopefully we'll be able to get a competitive bid and maybe we'll be able to get some of these things lower than what we have currently estimated. Also, there's a subject as to whether or not we're going to say we need a front loader. I mean, it's a possibility that we can make a conscious effort when we have forecasted snowstorms like we did to rent one. But this was what we decided as far as a wish list and what happens, Carrie, when if something would come off of this. Like, for instance, we didn't pass up here
Right.
of the front load.
Right.
How does that work?
Well, the best scenario in this case, since it sounds as though there are several items on this list that need to be discussed further, you'd probably be better off just tabling the ordinance and introducing it at your next meeting. That would be my suggestion if there are several items that you need to discuss as to whether that is the, what you need. There might be items on there that you haven't included, but what essentially happens with this bond ordinance that I drafted has all the items that are listed on the lists I provided you, and they're broken out by each useful life category. So if you start pulling items out now, we would need to literally go back and readjust the useful life so that the bond ordinance wouldn't necessarily be correct tonight. Most of the times, you know what you're introducing. It's been discussed, and as far as I know, Colleen had sent out this list. So what might be wise is just to table it to the next meeting and introduce this bond ordinance at the next meeting so that you have some understanding of exactly what you want on there. And then that bond ordinance would be just readjusted, and the principal amount of the bonds might be lower if you had removed an item or.
And I just also want to say, with Carrie talking about tabling it, the other thing you want to keep in mind is we don't want to do a bond ordinance and then as we're talking about issue a bond where we're going to end up not using that money. If something is not going to go forward, I certainly don't want to take money out and be paying interest on it over whatever lifetime it is and not use it. So I certainly think, since we are trying to get this done in a very quick manner, if that's how we're going to proceed, I think definitely if there's some major questions, if there's items that we think we want to remove, adjust, look into the cost of, I think definitely it should be tabled. I think that's really the smartest way to go about it than to push forward something that we don't have an intention of
Tommy,
going
how
through
much money
on.
do we have right now in the capital fund for the water utility?
In the capital improvement fund, we have a little bit under $300,000.
I mean, why are we not putting the backhoe and the front loader and the utility truck?
Because, John, I was never told that was for the water and sewer utility. Artie gave that to me as part of the public works equipment. Certainly if it was
Okay, we
part
have a
of
motion on the
works.
floor for this, so can we have a motion then, if you want, to postpone it?
Need to table.
Motion to table.
I'll make a motion to
That's-
table.
Postpone to a particular time,
I'll make a motion to table this.
to our next meeting.
To our next meeting, until we get more information, we can have a chance to discuss whether we really need.
And I'd like to
Stop.
ask the governing body, if we are going to possibly try and
That's my motion.
introduce a form of this at the next meeting, since a lot of this equipment is for public works and is for police, maybe we should have the chief
He should be here.
and the superintendent here, so they could further, I only know what they tell me. As far as the details of it, even, you might be right, John, some of this might be utility, and maybe that wasn't conveyed to me properly, so if they were here, we could have those answers at hand.
I mean, I don't
I think
understand
there's
why.
only one issue there that might have been utility.
Mr. Lane?
And the only thing I would say in terms of going out to bond, and we do pay our engineers like to go out, not bond, do bids. It costs a lot of money to go out and solicit bids, advertise and everything. There's a state list where everybody knows what the state standard Tahoe is. Everybody knows what the state pick-em-up truck is. Everybody knows what, and they're on the state list. You don't have to bid. If they're on the state list, you just go to the state list and buy it. So I would say as much as possible, use numbers off the state list and save yourself the advertising cost, the bidding cost, for standardized items that aren't really specialty items. That you see the same white pickup truck that everybody drives, the same LTD cruisers used to be. There's no such bidding those, doesn't make any sense.
Tom?
I have a motion to table.
He has a motion to table to the 25th. Is that okay with everybody? Could I have a second?
I'll second it.
Could I have a roll call, I guess, to table? To the 25th.
Mr. Brennan?
No.
Ms. Cindy?
Yes.
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Ms. King?
Yes.
Mr. Borba?
Yes.
So the motion has been tabled.
Yes.
Ordinance number 14, 2001. Could the clerk read the ordinance, please?
Bond ordinance number 14-2011, bond ordinance providing for software upgrade to the water and sewer utility equipment, appropriating $30,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $30,000 in bonds and notes to finance a portion of the cost thereof, authorized in and by the Borough of Spring Lake Heights in the County of Monmouth, New Jersey.
Could I have a motion to introduce and advertise in accordance with the law?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion on this one?
I wanna know why we're bonding $30,000. Are we bonding $30,000 when we got $300,000 sitting in the bank?
Well, the $300,000 that's in the capital improvement fund,
Won't we pay for the software?
it would, but it was also earmarked to do the fire hydrant replacement, which that will actually run above that, but it's one of the things, the fire hydrants can't all be replaced at once, so Art recommended doing a certain amount per year, using those funds to do that, so that we could do it each year and not have the stress on the system.
With all due respect to Mr. Herner, I think the financing of this, the financing for the borough is really a determination for this council. I mean, the idea that we have $300,000 sitting in a water sewer, and we were, I mean, I see Ms. Crippen here, we were budgeting year in, year out for fire hydrant replacement. Why were we budgeting for fire hydrant replacement if we had $300,000 sitting around for a fire hydrant replacement?
Any other discussion on this?
No, that's a question I want an answer to.
Well, who are you asking it
To
to?
anyone who wants to tell me. Since when was this $300,000 earmarked for fire hydrant replacement?
Well, it was something that was brought up with the bond ordinance about replacing the fire.
I mean, recently.
Right.
So it was recently determined by our public works superintendent that the $300,000 that was kicking around for forever should be used for fire hydrant replacement. And we should go out and incur soft costs for a bond of $30,000 for software where we have $300,000 in the bank. Am I missing something? Am I missing something?
Sarah?
John, just so you all know, Art Herner, myself, and Colleen had kicked this around because we felt that the software that is used in the office for Mary Grace to do the billing and so on and so forth has been
It's for the scanner you're talking about.
right.
Right, I know the issue.
Has been kept together by rubber bands.
Look, I don't have a problem with spending 30,000, but why aren't we spending it out of the money we
Because,
have?
because we have got a large amount of fire hydrants in town that we need to replace that are of major, major concern.
But we've been paying as we go, and that's the way we've been budgeting for the fire hydrants for forever. Now all of a sudden, you and Artie and Colleen have determined that $300,000.
Well, how long is it gonna take us to spend the $300,000 for the fire hydrant replacements?
Can you answer me that?
No, I cannot. In
Already
all honesty, I
estimates it's
cannot.
about 40,000 a year to.
40,000 a year, so that's 8 years.
That's the rough.
So why
estimate.
don't we, if we need the software, and I don't disagree that we need the software, I mean, if we need the software, let's buy the software, but let's buy it out of the money that's in the bank.
But this here is supposed to go along with the existing, am I understanding what you told me, Colleen, correctly? That this is going to be part of the overall bond ordinance?
It would all be packaged together.
Right.
With the same bond issue. However, Councilman Brennan is correct that if we wanted to, we could easily take this out of the capital improvement fund and just have less money to put towards the fire hydrant.
But hold on a second. For the last bunch of years, we've been paying for the fire hydrants as we go along. Are we gonna stop doing that? Is that what we're gonna do?
Well, it was taken out of the budget this year.
It was taken out of the budget this year, I know, and I argued that it shouldn't be because we should pay as we go. But, so now, in other words, what you're saying is you wanna hold on the money for 8 years to replace fire hydrants 8 years from now, so that we can save money as, I mean, that makes no sense to me. We've got $300,000 sitting in the bank. We have a need immediately, right now, let's spend it for that. And 8 years from now, hopefully, some predecessor council, or excuse me, successor council will be in a position to be wise enough to pay for fire hydrants as they go.
Didn't we do 4 for 16,000?
Yes.
Every year we
Yes.
replace the worst 4 for 16,000.
Is that gonna be done this year as well?
That was the projected, yeah.
I mean, it's
It's not,
budgeted.
it's not budgeted at all this year. There's
You
no
took it out.
budget for fire hydrant replacement. It was determined that that could be done through capital. And we were doing 4 per year because that's what the budget could sustain. But since there's over 100 that need to be replaced, 4 per year is going to take.
Colleen?
Over 100, there's always over 100. Every year there's over 100 that need to be replaced. And every year we only replace 4. I mean, that's my understanding, and I think I discussed it with you, we took it off the, because we had the capital improvement money.
Right.
I didn't say we were gonna bond it, I said we were gonna, right? I said
Right,
we were
that's
gonna
the thing,
pay
we
for
weren't
the
gonna
hydrants
bond it.
out of the capital improvement money.
But to do that project, if you're not gonna bond it, it has to be done as a capital ordinance, which has to be, the funds have to be taken from somewhere. You have to write the ordinance and say what you're gonna use it for, and we can take the money out of the capital improvement fund. But I don't think you wanna write an ordinance for that each year, so you'd have to determine how many you wanna do the ordinance, and take that from the capital improvement fund.
Rich?
I just said, what replenishes the capital improvement?
Well, normally,
How much goes into it each year? Do funds come into it?
In the utility fund, I don't believe that you have a standard that you put into the capital improvement fund each year. In the general fund, it's $5,000. It used to be more than that, it's been cut
How
back.
do we accumulate this $300,000?
I'd have to go back and look at the history of it, I don't know, I came into it being,
But we have $300,000 in a capital fund.
right.
And this is, I agree with John, this is a capital improvement.
Mhm. I don't disagree with that.
It's just a different word.
So the motion on hand is to introduce and advertise in accordance with the law. And we had our discussion. Anybody else? So let's vote on this, and if this goes down, then council is saying they want to just take this out of the capital improvement
This can
fund?
be rewritten as a capital ordinance as opposed to doing it
Okay.
as a bond
Okay.
ordinance.
May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Brennan?
No.
Ms. Cynthia?
No.
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Ms. King?
Yes.
Mr. Vorback?
No.
Motion did not pass.
Did not pass. Okay, resolution number 116, 2011. Authorizing the mayor to execute Fred Raffetto's contract. May I have a motion, please?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Harry, thank you very much for
Oh,
coming.
thank you. You know, if you have any questions, you know, during the week or the next couple weeks as to financing options or what have you know, I'm very easily accessible, or you can pass some questions through Colleen.
Okay.
So, you know, there are a lot of different options you have out there. Certainly, I'm not promoting what's included in this, but when I was requested to do a bond ordinance for these items, that's what I did, and I'm giving you the financing options that you have available.
No, thank you, because now we're actually talking about doing it.
Well, I just, I was concerned because as far as whether or not we have the books, everything will purchase.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to authorize the mayor to execute a contract for Fred Raffetto. Do we have a,
We had a first and a second.
okay, any discussion? May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Brennan?
Yes.
Ms. Cynthia?
Yes.
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Ms. King?
Yes.
Mr. Vorback?
Yes.
Resolution 117, 2011, authorizing the governing body certification of our 2010 audit, which has to be done immediately. May I have a motion, please?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Brennan?
Yes.
Ms. Cynthia? Yes. Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Ms. King?
Yes.
Mr. Vorback?
Yes.
And could I remind council, the certification is on the front table. Please don't leave without signing it. May I have a motion, please, to open the second voice of the public for new business only?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Would anyone like to speak? I'm sorry about the mic.
You can hear me.
Please state your name and,
Oh, God, it's her, that you drive. Why do we need 2 more SUVs? How many vehicles do we have in this town? Thank you, John.
Excuse me.
I don't think it's
Councilman,
working,
It's
John.
not working.
It's not working.
How many vehicles do we have? Cars, I mean, trucks, you see them? You talk about the fire department. See, and trucks and cars, vehicles will run over 5 years if you take proper care of them. Our trucks and police cars are not on the road they don't travel the distance. My husband was a mechanic, I know what I'm speaking about. You claim we have good mechanics, then why do we need so many vehicles and new ones all the time? And as you know, Rich, in your business, you budget for this, you know that, Patty. It should be in the budget towards new ones all the time, don't spring on us. We do need new garbage trucks. You're gonna come around and you think they're not gonna make it. And this year, we were lucky, we were able to get help
But they
for
didn't help
our.
us with the snow. They didn't help us with the snow.
That was a special issue.
We
And
do
Gladys,
need
next
new
time we're
garbage.
gonna have Dave and Artie here and they can answer.
Yes, and we also,
Questions?
yes, we need a police officer here to answer questions. And another question is, you want to put the job on Janine. I like Janine very much and she's capable. Is she certified? You always say you want someone certified. Is she certified? Has she gone to school and gotten her certificate? Why are you holding up on that? If you feel she's well qualified, send her to school and let her get certified instead of looking for someone else.
Do you agree we should pay for her to go to school if she was the person that we selected?
Pardon?
Should we pay for her? Shouldn't we pay for
Most
her
towns
to have
do.
that?
Most towns do,
Okay.
you know
Yes.
that. Why should it come out of her money? She's been doing the job. That's how I feel. And I speak for a lot of people that sit back here and don't open their mouth, and I'm the culprit that comes up. reputation, I'm sorry.
And we
not
thank
shy.
you for that.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Gladys. Would anyone else like to speak? John?
John Lewis, Prospect Avenue, Spring Lake Heights.
Don't get too comfortable, John.
Oh, yeah, I may be.
John, I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding.
This is so much nicer. Nice to meet you, Ms. Morgan. I didn't know you. I didn't want you to get this job, and I'll explain as we go on why not. The fire department alone has $392,000 in their budget in reserve. The school board, 2 years ago when the budget failed, you went in, John, and they had raised it $700,000 in 1 year after it failed. You cut $50,000 off that $700,000 that they raised. It turns out that they just found out they had an extra $380,000. I'd like to ask her, what's the chances of the school board giving us that $380,000 back? With the $392,000 that the fire department padded their budget with, we'd have almost the whole bond that you want to go out and borrow. What we have to stop are these other taxing entities being able to pad their budget to the tune of $400,000 and $500,000 a year, and then go to the people and say we need to borrow $1 million on Art Herner's say-so. This is the guy who should have been budgeting for those garbage trucks the last 15 years and chose for some reason not to, and no one all those years on the council ever brought it up to say we have no capital account. And again, I don't know
Excuse me, if I could just, I don't think that's what he could do. I mean, he can suggest,
He could come in
but
and
the
say,
council has to vote.
he could say, part of my budget, I'd like to put $20,000 a year in a capital account to pay for garbage trucks that are going to be old.
I wasn't here last year.
And
I
no,
can tell you what he wants
I'm
to
not
do this
blaming
year.
anybody.
And it's
You
the
people
public
that
wants
have
to
been
vote.
on the city council for years know exactly what's been going on. And the poor stupid public is going to wake up 6 months from now, and they're going to get a tax bill from the school board this year, next year, and the year after. The only people that didn't want to take a wage freeze for whatever reason. And then, after they hit us over the head with a 9% increase, you go out and hire this lady as a bond counsel. I mean, I find it, from a taxpayer's point of view, terrible that you would do that. But maybe that she's here listening to us and listening to the people and seeing the problem that we're in here with money. You might be able to convince the people over there to stop doling out these raises and give us some of that money back that's sitting in reserve and should have been not taken in the first place. And when you have the chance to cut these budgets, I know, when I mention cut $450,000 from the school board budget, they look at me like I've got horns. Well, it turns out there was $450,000 in the school budget. And why should the little guys, the Department of Public Works guys, the people in the office, the people in the court, take these hits year after year after year? And if you borrow $1 million, they're going to have to take them for a couple more years and have the school board dance around holding the kids up as shields while they're taking all this money from us. So please, try to, dig your heels in and look for cash. I mean, look for the cash and use it. The police, the answer, Gladys's answer, why are there 2 police cars on it? Because whenever these bond issues come up, everybody throws in for the kitchen sink. They want to get in on the gravy train. But we're the ones going to be paying for it when I believe there's enough cash sitting in other people's bank accounts right now. Fire Department 392, it's there, and it's going to revert back to this town shortly. And Maybe the school board wants to donate a front-end loader. I mean, I was a farmer, I bought them. You don't need to go out and buy an expensive one. There are farmers and contractors going out of business every day, and when you go to these auctions, you could get a very workable one for $30,000. I mean, so they don't need to go out and spend $130,000 for one.
John, we can't.
Would you let John speak, please?
If you have
Voice your
cash, I think
comment.
you can, John. Maybe you can't do it borrowing it through bonds, but if you got cash.
You have to have a qualified purchasing agent to be able to spend more than 15,000, whatever it is. We don't have a qualified.
Okay, I mean, I mentioned.
Yeah,
we could go to
we
the
might,
auction.
we might get a borough clerk right now.
I mentioned a couple of times to people up there, a friend of mine's son is a executive with management, waste management, and they buy a few garbage trucks that even though he lives in Belmar, you might be able to talk to this fellow and find out if there's any deal that he could get if you're buying with waste management. Maybe they buy 100 at a time. But I don't like borrowing money, and in a couple of weeks, if the nitwits in Washington don't get it together and the debt ceiling is not passed, interest rates are going to go through the roof. And you're going to know that by August 2nd. So this bond issue may be a moot point if that happens and things start to deteriorate, because I imagine that the interest on these bonds will shoot through the roof. If the government's not paying their bills, why should we? You know.
Okay, thank you, John.
Yeah.
Would anyone else like to speak? My motion to close the second voice of the public,
I'll
please.
make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
I have a motion to move bills to the finance committee.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Brennan?
Yes.
Ms. Cynthia? Yes. Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Ms. King?
Yes.
Mr. Warbeck?
Yes.
May I have a motion to draw voucher warrants?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Brennan?
Yes.
Ms. Cynthia? Yes. Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Ms. King?
Yes.
Mr. Warbeck?
Yes.
May I have a motion to adjourn at 9:28, please?
I'll make that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.